What's up, Patrick? Um, Enjoyed following your train of thought in this video. Um, when you look at the human face, you see the personality, literally. I mean, that's the whole idea of the person is it's a mask with a voice. That's what the word person means. Um, so when you consider it, you basically, um, not when you consider it, but when you just look at it, the human face, it's basically the soul, or it's essentially the soul made physical, the soul trying to express itself in the sensory world. Um, and so, the body and the soul aren't separate things. The soul is what the face is trying to do. The body isn't just an object. It's a process trying to do something. And to understand how a body can try to do something, how it can have um, intentionality or consciousness, or sentience, or any sort of directedness toward the world, we must say it has a soul. Um, that's not something we're adding to the physical object, but the thing is, it's not just an object because it has a soul, which is just to say that it's a process, not a thing, a verb, not a noun, and it's a process aiming towards something. So, part of the process aiming towards something that is my body is the face, and what the face aims toward is being and becoming, mostly becoming a person. The personality is how the soul um, displays itself to others, and in displaying itself to others, it evolves because what it displays will be reflected back by all the other faces. My face knows itself in reference to others. It also knows itself in reference to mirrors. I can look at myself. Um, and, depending on how narcissistic our personality is, we could be either more focused on our own mirror image, or we could be more focused on others if we are more extroverted, you could say. I mean, this could be the main difference. The degree of narcissism may be related to introversion and extroversion. Of course, this is a relative scheme because uh, an extrovert can be only seeing themselves in others, and so even while they're interacting with other people, they're interacting with them as objects of their own desire, not as independent personalities. Um, so narcissism also isn't necessarily a bad thing. So if you are introverted and you, for whatever reason, become not necessarily obsessive, but at least very deeply interested in your own inner imagination, your own intuition, um, inspirations that seem to arise from nothing in the physical world that you can see, but from some inner place of divine desire that you can't explain. Um, that sort of inwardly directed thought, or thought activity, the spiritual path we could call it, is not necessarily a bad thing, though we could classify it as a form of narcissism, of self-obsession. But, ultimately, if the universe is one, then it's one self obsessed with its own existence. Um, that's what else could the universe possibly be doing? It's one verse, a uni story, all happening together. All the characters have some role to play, some causal influence to have over one another, and the whole thing unfolds, and it has various um, lulls, various climactic moments. Um, it has periods of drastic transition when all of a sudden clouds of hydrogen gas become stars, and stars become galaxies, and then stars destroy themselves to create heavier elements, which then coalesce into solar systems, not just stars, but families um, of interstellar objects that the family has a genetic relationship to its son, its parent, and its brothers and sisters, the planets that orbit with it. So the Earth is very much um, part of this solar system. What goes on this planet is not separate from Jupiter and Venus and Mars and Mercury, and the Sun especially. Everything happening here is related to what goes on in the sky. Heaven and Earth, they're not two things. Earth is very much, um, it's a lot heavier than the astral plane, or than, we call it outer space in our materialistic culture today. And I'm not denying that, yeah, it actually really is up there. You can go up there. You can go to the moon. So it's not, the moon isn't just, a mythological creature that, we think influences the menstrual cycle and creates vampires and has all sorts of magical effects on Earth. Um, the moon is also a place that you can go and visit. It's just as physical as the Earth. So are all the other planets, and all the other stars that we see in the sky are other solar systems that very may well contain planets like Earth with life, with intelligent life. We have no empirical proof of this, but based on our knowledge of the history of our universe that we have observed by looking at the sky and measuring the energies that rain upon us from it in various different ways. We've seen to the beginning of time, whatever that means. So while we can't prove the existence of life on other planets, we can pretty well assume that that's what this universe does. Matter isn't just dead stuff; it's active process, which with goals and desires. Um, and obviously, clouds of hydrogen are more habitual than organized living bodies, but clouds of hydrogen are not dead stuff. They self-organize and emerge into some higher property with a more complex experience of itself and a more complex desire. A star becomes capable of more than mere hydrogen atoms. Um, and then, when a star, goes into supernova and explodes, it becomes more eventually after this cloud can recoalesce. It becomes more than it was prior. And so you can see every moment of rebirth or every moment of destruction that leads to new creation is an achievement of complexity, of greater complexity. And that's how evolution works. So as people, as human beings, we're faced with this dilemma of, we obviously recognize the personalities of one another. Um, any person is capable of criticizing the personality of somebody else. I mean, that's what most people talk about. They gossip about, who did this to who and said what to who, and, we accuse other people of things. Very seldom, though, it's much rarer for people to start to become aware of their own personality, become their own critic, because that's the only way you can develop. So a certain degree of, not narcissism. Narcissism would be over obsessive inwardness and self-obsession or self-love. But you need to be not entirely focused on the personalities of others, but also focused on your own if you hope to develop, to evolve, to gain the ability to express higher desires, not just um, carnal. Not that carnal desires are bad, but you will at least be capable of also expressing spiritual desires once you've developed inwardly. Um, So, you were talking also about the human distinguishing itself from nature. Are we animals or are we aliens, as you put it? And I would say we're both. Um, we're obviously, in terms of evolutionary moments of creative emergence from one level to another, like from hydrogen to stars, or from um, non-living matter to living matter, from amino acids floating around in salty oceans to free living cellular organisms. The human being is also that same sort of creative emergence on top of the animal world. We can self-reflect, um, and that gives us access to a realm of ideas which can't be reduced to physical experiences, sensory experiences. And so as soon as we begin to have culture, we've already entered a spiritual realm that can't be reduced to the material realm if we hope to understand it, because it's cultural. To understand culture, you're understanding understanding. And so it's a whole other layer of causality on top of mere mechanical, physical causality that we normally call nature. But I think because of the presence of the human being in this universe, once we've taken into consideration our own ability to do science and philosophy and, to express ourselves religiously and actually relate to the divine, for that to be possible, nature can't just be this dumb mechanical stuff. It obviously has to be potentially intelligent. And the steps that it took in, the 13.7 billion years prior to the emergence of human beings on planet Earth were already intelligent, in the sense that they're not the product of mere random chance. Because, given the amount of time that has passed, for our universe to have led to life, and especially intelligent life, what we normally consider intelligence, to human civilization and technology and so forth, for that to be possible, the probability is that, infinitesimally small that it would lead to us. I think we would need 100 times more time between now and the beginning of the universe for it to start to become somewhat probable. Maybe 50% of universes would accidentally lead to what we have, given 1,000 billion years. So we need to see some sort of element of desire working itself out in the universe itself, a desire for transcendence, which, in every leap that the universe takes into the future, in every creative moment of expression, um, there isn't complete transcendence, but there is a leap to a further um, degree and intensity of expression that is closer to transcendence. So, yeah, infinity is infinite, but there are degrees of infinity. Um, because the universe isn't just a quantitative sort of thing, it's qualitative too. So we can't understand it with mere numbers. Infinity is not only a number. I mean, it's a numerical expression with a certain meaning, and you can't grasp the meaning based on the numbers alone. So infinity has various qualitative degrees. So the human being is a more intense form of infinity, or of the expression of the infinite, than a blade of grass. And of course, sometimes it's difficult to judge. Is the Earth as a whole more complex and more intense in terms of the expression of material complexity in our universe, which is correlated with some inner experiential aspect as well? Is that more complex, more valuable than the human brain? Um, it's difficult to say. I mean, how many people would it take for it to equal the amount of moral worth of a jungle in a rainforest in the Amazon in South America. How many trees is one person worth? Would you wipe out a quarter of the Amazon to save one person's life? There are ecological consequences that would eventually lead to the deaths of more people, I think you could say, but still, in that moment, a few 100,000 trees and all the other creatures that live there, or a single human being. It's I think it's a difficult moral dilemma because it requires a degree of reasoning about the value of organized natural systems that we haven't developed yet, because we're so used to thinking of only the human being as being meaningful in this entire universe, at least in our modern culture, for hundreds of thousands of years, at least 200,000 years since Homo sapiens have been a classifiable species on this planet. I think we've had a meaningful relationship to the universe in terms of thinking that it was alive and had some purpose that we were expressions of. It's only very recently that we've decided that that's impossible. At least the mainstream culture has decided that, which the mainstream culture is at war against pretty much the same amount of people that disagree and say that, no, there is a God, and he's very angry at you for disobeying what we believe is true. So there's still we're still conflicted as a global mind about the nature of the universe. We're very much a schizophrenic noosphere right now. The mental envelope which is formed around the natural planet created by human beings, and the internet is sort of the essential, at least material expression of the noosphere. It's very much in conflict with itself and with the natural world that it is surrounding. The internet is burning, it's requiring that more greenhouse gas producing material be burned than any other technology on the planet. I would assume. Not just the internet, but also the computers required to produce the internet, to run the platform. So, while this is creating, the internet is creating the culture that's going to be required to completely transform the way we live on the planet, it's also destroying the planet. So it's very much a double-edged sword, and it's difficult to understand the way evolution works because it's a dialectical process. It's difficult to understand it if the understanding is a merely intellectual enterprise. If we can only understand the world by putting things into various boxes and whatnot, then obviously we cannot understand evolution. But if we can participate in the way nature unfolds intellectually by entering the conversation going on in the world around us, if we can learn to speak nature's language, which it's really a matter of relearning it, because we are natural organisms. If we are capable of remembering our own originality, our source, which is the natural world itself, then the understanding, we can understand nature. We can remember our own embeddedness in the world and include that embeddedness in our understanding of culture. So in terms of the personality, again, personality is fundamentally an intersubjective, relational entity. So yeah, we can talk about individuals. The personality is an entity, but it's an entity which is codependent. And codependency is a bad thing psychologically, I would say. When two people require one another, they require the love of the other. they need to be desired by the other person in order to be happy. That's not always good, but I think, every human being is in the same basic relationship, no matter what. We all want to be desired by everybody else, and we want to desire ourselves. It's almost as though often, if we aren't desired by others, we don't desire ourselves. Um, what's left out in this whole thing is of course, our own desire of others, which, it seems that from our own inner experience, we desire someone else, and then once we get them, we don't really want them anymore, because what we desired was, the desire itself that we had for them can only be defined by its absence. Desire is an absence. And, if it's difficult to really go further into what that means. I mean, read Jacques Lacan. He talks about, subjectivity is basically can only be defined negatively. It's an empty. It's the emptiness of reality itself. It's our own existence, here and now, that cannot be. We cannot signify it in any way. It's so alien. It's so other that, we necessarily attach ourselves to an ego, which is our own internalization of what we think we look like to others. Um, and so we don't have an inner experience of ourselves when we're only focused on our desire for others. Um, but the trick is to actually be able to focus on your own desire instead of just on who desires you. Um, so instead of trying to gain your self-esteem from how other people think of you, if you begin with yourself, if you learn to love yourself before, and I'm just reversing the way we normally think about this, not to say that you have to start this way, but it's worth considering, given that usually we think, if other people don't like us, how can I like myself? But if we begin by loving ourselves, then that's what allows us to focus on our own desire. And once you begin to do that, you recognize that desire is just a lack of something. So that, if I got what I assumed I desired, I wouldn't actually be happy, because, pleasure comes from desire. And once the desire is fulfilled, the pleasure disappears. Hunger. You eat something. No more hunger. And so, yeah, you're satisfied, but the satisfaction itself dissipates. Um, there was nothing to it. And so, that begins a sort of inner spiritual uh, process of reflection that allows you to not disidentify with your desires, but recognize them, and in a way objectify them, though they're still part of you. Objectifying means just coming to be conscious of their own effect upon you, and the fact that their supposed aim is an illusion. The things that we desire are projections of our own mind. Until we've become aware of who we are, until we've faced our own desires, we can't understand what it is that we're desiring. We are desiring something real, but through desire we never reach it. It always, falls through our fingers. Um, but of course, it all sounds like I'm saying desire is a bad thing. But I'm not trying to say that. The whole universe is an expression of emotion. Even the whole universe is expression. It's feeling, striving for some greater degree of intensity, and we can only assume because it's trying to reach a transcendent omega. Um, so this is a really long video, and I'm probably not going to cut it up into separate pieces, because, why? If you want it to be cut up, you can do that yourself. But the personality is where I started, and I think it remains a mystery even after 25 minutes, and you know that's no surprise.